I am Dan, and I'm with Black Timber Services. Where should I stand?
You look better on camera. So Dan, we just dug the trench for the electrical system. You're not an electrician.
No, sir.
Finally got you on camera though. Our viewers watch this because they're probably going to want to build their own house. If they happen to get a hold of a backhoe, I'm not wanting this to be a deterrent to them, but more of a warning, because I didn't want to do this myself, and I know why. Why would I hire someone like you?
Excavation it's a tough deal. It's not a tough deal. It's actually a really easy deal, but the more experience you have, the smoother everything goes, the quicker it goes. You rent a piece of equipment like that, it's gonna cost you $400 or $500 a day, but you may be in it 4 or 5 days, where an experienced operator may take 6 hours. Is probably the biggest reason that I could see.
I also noticed over here, you got really slow moving in this area.
Yes, sir.
When I came up to yell at you for being lazy, I actually noticed these blue lines. It's getting kind of dark, but I think they can see that blue line on the ground.
Yeah.
And there's a series of them, and they go from the house, my old house, to the pump beyond your truck there.
Yeah.
Right in line with where you were getting slow. What are we looking out for there?
So we brought out a device called the line locator. We tied it onto your electrical lines that go out and feed electricity to your well pump. That sends a signal through those wires that the device picks up, and with that we located the general vicinity, should be within about 18 inches of where your electric lines run in the ground. So with that, we knew where they were. We go real slow, we real careful, methodical, and make sure we don't tear anything up while we're digging.
When I put the pipe that I have laying down over there into the ditch that we just dug, do I need to put something over that to locate it with a locator in the future? What's the deal with that?
So this is electricity, so the signal will actually run on those electrical wires.
Oh,
so
perfect.
You do not need a tracer wire on something like this.
But there is such a thing called a tracer wire.
There is such a thing called the tracer wire, and where you just lay a poly line in the ground, a tracer is not a bad idea, so it can be located in the future.
So what I'm gathering is, even if I'm good at operating, let's say a big machine like that, I still wouldn't want to do this anyways, because I would probably be hitting lines willy-nilly, not careful enough. I just can't stress enough how, A, how quick you are at this, and then B, how careful you are around the things that I would probably not be careful around. So if we snapped an electrical line, that would have been it for a couple days.
You guys probably wouldn't have been very happy with Black Timber Services.
If Dan wants me to, I'm going to put his information down below. So
okay.
We'll talk to him later. Thanks, Dan. In the very first video of this house build series, we went over where I put the UFER ground. This bar that's tied into the rebar in the footer. This trench that you see dug here is heading right where that UFER ground is. Right where the camera is the electrical box for my old home and for the new home. Part of the requirements that we had when we got our paperwork and everything all covered for our new house build was that we had to share electricity with our current house. That doesn't really matter unless you're interested in the minutia of getting these things approved. We just dug the trench for this pipe that I glued all together. I'm going to throw that pipe in the trench, and then again, where the camera is the source of electricity that will run through the pipe all the way to the new house. Now that pipe is in this trench here, it's going to pop up into this box, and the electrician is going to come out here and have a conversation with the little elves that live in this box to try to convince them to produce electricity for our new house. Part of the requirements for this is that the top of this conduit needs to be a minimum of 18 inches below grade. I'm just going to go at random points and make sure that that is indeed the case. The electrical inspectors in Durango are state inspectors, but the guy said that I could just send him pictures of the pipe itself and make sure that every few places send pictures of it being deep enough, and then they need to see every connection point. So where the 90s pop up on the ends, connectors in between. Today's goal is to hang the electric box for the outside of the home on the outside of the home. These are insulated concrete forms, meaning there's 2.5 inches of foam right here, and on the other side of that 2.5 inches is concrete. These black webs act as a stud somewhat in the end of here. You can screw things to it like drywall and stuff. Honestly, I don't think they're strong enough to hold up this big heavy electrical box that I'm about to install. So I purchased these. These are concrete anchors. If you drill a hole in the concrete and then a hammer, and then put this in that hole and hammer it in, it bites into the concrete. And it'll anchor itself in there pretty well. But there's an issue. This foam is compressible. Now, I'm not super strong. I'm not strong enough to compress that completely by hand. But if I held just that much pressure on it over time, I'd put quite a bit of deformation into this foam. I can't just hammer this into the concrete behind the foam and start screwing this down, because the brackets that I would be installing, they would press into this foam over time. And with that heavy box hanging on them, I'd probably have to come out here a couple times a year and retighten them down until eventually that whole electrical box would be smushed into the actual concrete. I don't want to do that. These are 1/2 inch. I have a bunch of extra 1/2 inch conduit that I used for penetrations through the wall. Wow, it's a big spider. Hey, buddy. Damn. With this 1/2 inch conduit, that will accept this concrete anchor just fine. I cut that 1/2 inch conduit into 2.5 inch sleeves that perfectly fit the width of one of these. Now, instead of just putting this into the concrete, I can put this in. It will butt up against the concrete. This will go in there and it will keep anything from pushing farther back into the wall. I tried to make each hole as level as I could without getting the drill up or down or side to side. All right, so now that concrete's exposed and that hole's all cleaned out, I can take my little sleeves, I guess spacers is what I should call them, and they'll fit right in there. That's flush with this, and it's also butted up against the concrete behind it. Now, when I put my bracket up, I can bolt it in to the wall, and it can't compress into the foam. The next thing is I have to drill a hole into the concrete to receive the concrete anchors. Now these holes are here. This bracket can go up, make sure the holes line up somewhat, and they do. This is 2.5 inch thick foam. This is a 4.25 inch long. I don't think it's long enough to, wow. There's a lot of tarantulas here. Hey buddy, did you eat your other friend? I can hammer this in there. Always make sure you leave the nut on the end of the bolt, or else you'll hammer those threads into unusability. The washer on, put the nut on. Uh-oh. Well, that's not gonna work for me. It's fantastic if I could get that nut tightened, and I cannot, because there's no way to get a tool in there. I need a socket on there or a wrench, and it just won't fit. The tolerances are too tight. All right, I got an idea. These things are so beefy and so strong that I don't think I'll be sacrificing anything if I cut some of this channel away to make room for a socket. I'm gonna give it a shot. However, I am going to use longer bolts. This is long enough and it's gonna catch. I don't wanna risk it. I'm just gonna use longer ones. See, that's definitely gonna catch. It's always tempting to hammer it in like all the way. So I'm gonna mark around where the bolts are gonna be, or the nuts are gonna be. Take that to the shop, I'll grind it off. I'm not gonna film that part, but okay, so here's what I did. You can see I just cut out channels, and I'm gonna paint them now that I've exposed the underneath the galvanized. These will rust in the weather. That's a messy paint job, but we're never gonna see it, hopefully. Right. I forgot the sleeves. Now the sleeves are in. Now I can put this on. That's nice. So now, when the real electrician shows up, everything is inside the box that came with the box. The wires are going to come from that area over there, and the conduit runs all the way, and it goes straight under that box that we just mounted. The 90 that's coming up out of the ground, it goes straight up into the underside of that box, where we will knock this out and run the power into the box. All right, we got it. It's in and it's exciting. It is live. I'm actively using these two cords that are plugged into my new house, finally. Dan came back and filled in the trench here, which is also pretty exciting because now I can use my driveway again. This is, I think it's called a slip joint. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. It's glued on this side, but on this side, the conduit that goes into it is not glued to it. It actually has a ring, an O-ring in there, and it allows movement of the structure or the ground or the pipe or whatever. This copper is tied to a rod on the ground, which I guess is necessary. It's also tied to the UFA ground on the inside of the house. The pipe that comes out of the ground has to be schedule 80, goes into the box. So as the wires come into the box, there's only 8 available slots for any type of switch or surge protector like they have here. There's the main shutoff and one 20 amp breaker already installed, and I believe that's running this little outlet here. And I don't know what I'm going to be looking at when I take this cover off necessarily, and I'm probably going to get some stuff wrong. I'll try to keep the description loose and general. If you have a functioning knowledge of what exactly it is that we're looking at, why they used it this way, something like that, let me know. I understand electricity pretty well, but not well enough to tackle this on my own. It scares me. These wires coming up out of this pipe right here are alive. They're hot. They would hurt me very badly and or kill me if I were to mess too much with them up here. Under these 2 yellow caps, that's where these 2 black ones tie in to the new house. There's a black one with a yellow tracer, and it ties in up there. I believe that's the neutral. And then there's a green one coming out that ties into this bar over here, and that's the ground. That's coming from the electrical box. On the house side, there's wires coming out, which is this red one, this black one. They're not tied in yet. They will be tied in to these 2 giant lugs here. And there's a green one and a white one. The white one being the neutral, the green one being, again, the ground. That's pretty much all that's going on so far inside this box. All right, so those wires you saw inside that box that go up to the top are going through this conduit here. Up at the very top of this is a junction box, and then it pops through the wood over the top. The gray line ties in and makes its way through the attic, and you can see that gray wire coming around. It ends up coming down into this sub panel. This isn't active yet. They do have the tie-ins from outside right here and here, and a bunch of wires that are called home runs that go to various areas in the home. They're pretty clever. They have labels on their wires. Dining room. All that interior stuff is exciting, but it's for another video. Now, if we head to the other side of this conduit, woo! This is the original pipe that came into the box. They didn't really have to do anything there. I think they put a new slip joint on here though. I don't think there was one here before. Could be wrong about that, but I can't find my other slip joint that I bought, so. But yeah, essentially back here is just another 3 or 4 wires. I never got a picture of it. I'm not gonna take it apart, that feed the old house. There's a knockout here and another port here to tie in more. but there was an issue with the length of the wires that existed in there. There was an issue. So what they had to do was this. Put this box down here. And now they're tied in everywhere with these connectors here. Hot from the box, hot from the house, and hot from the new house. Same thing, hot from the box, hot from the house, hot from the new house, neutral from all 3 locations, and ground from all 3 locations. And those are tied in right here. They can be accessed through this cover that will be at ground level. And in a future video, I'll go over everything that I can on the interior of the home. There are a few reasons why I chose not to do this electrical work myself. The biggest one is time. I would have loved to take the time to learn everything, to do it right, to button it up, make it look pretty, and learn all the ins and outs of the code, but we don't have the time for that. Another reason why I didn't want to do this myself was because of the inspector that we're dealing with. Like I said, it's a state inspector, but the one assigned to us locally is pretty strict, which isn't bad, by the way. A strict inspector looking at work that someone who admittedly doesn't know what they're doing has done would probably take even more time. Maybe a third reason. The third reason I didn't want to attempt this on my own, and this will be in a future video, is just the complication of this spaghetti mess. How high boxes should be over cabinets. They knew how far apart these boxes should be. Everywhere, in every room, they thought about where to put the light switches and why to put them there. And it was a second nature, and it was so fast. They were so quick at it. It was just worth it for me to hire them out. In the future, I will attempt this myself on another house build, with help, of course, but not this time. Thanks for joining. Like and subscribe. We love the support. Thank you, guys.